Hello and welcome to the Peace Talk, this time with Christina Mattiello. Christina Mattiello is the president of CIPAX, the Inter-Confessional Center for Peace in Italy. CIPAX organizes various public debates, lectures, and demonstrations. Christina published theological books on solidarity and liberation. Dear Christina, thank you very much for your time. It's a great honor to have you here.
Thank you, Josef, for calling me. Thank you.
We met at this International Summit for Peace for Ukraine held in Vienna a few weeks ago. Before I ask you about your impressions on this conference that was also criticized by left-wing, left liberal media in Austria, I would like to know what did inspire you, what did motivate you to become part of the peace movement? Why is peace so important to you?
Yes, thank you. I believe that wars are always connected with injustice and violation of human rights, economic interests, and an insane greed for political power. And behind every conflict, they are the real reason for that and for the breaking. Violence is always affecting the poorest and the weakest people in the society. This is another reason why I think we must act to avoid it and to contrast it. First of all, I'd like to remember to recall Bertholt Brecht's poem about wars. He wrote many about wars, and once said, at the end of the war, among those who were defeated, poor people got hungry. Among the winner, poor people got hungry, also got hungry too. And so this is what I think. We have to avoid wars because the weakest areas of society are very, very badly damaged, although they are often manipulated and they do not really understand that. So we have to do something for them in order to help them to become conscious of that.
Absolutely, yes. And I totally agree that the poorest and the peasantry are going to the war and not the oligarchs. Putin oligarchs are not in the fight in Ukraine, and also the Western oligarchs and transnational corporation CEOs. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, that one has to bear in mind. Yes. And for how long are you part of this peace movement?
It's been a long time, I think. 20, 30 years.
Wow.
20.
Wow, inspiring.
I used to be not so much oriented towards not violence when I was very young, because we were in a period where you had so many, fascist governments in America Latina. And so as Christians in a critical way, in a critical orientation towards our churches, we also supported some revolutions, ideally, of course. They never took action in a direct way, but ideally we were with them because we thought they were fighting against injustice. Then I realized that violence, I think violence is always losing, actually. From an ethical point of view, I don't know. I think, so I changed my ideas a bit.
Absolutely. And as far as I can hear and understand you, peace is for you more than just the absence of war. Peace is more, you understand it broader. Peace is like social and economic justice and
justice, yes.
egalitarian society and more than just the absence of bombing and war. Is it correct?
Respect of human rights for everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Freedom.
Absolutely.
Of expression.
And you are the president of, like I said in the beginning, of CIPAX. CIPAX is the inter-confessional confessional center for peace in Italy. So what does it stand for? What are the main goals, values, and the philosophy of CIPAX?
Yes, thank you, Joseph, for giving me the chance, the possibility to talk about association. Now formally the name is that Center for Interreligious Peace, but inter-confessional. I'm sorry, but now we mean interreligious because we have a very strong connection with the Muslim world in Italy. It has become stronger and wider because of immigration, of the social phenomenon of immigration in Italy. Once upon a time we were a migration country. Now we are an immigration country. We attract people, and so Muslims are becoming a daily presence, in our society, and so we have a strict connection. Our honored president is internationally known Muslim theologue, Adnan Mokrani. And so we are interreligious. Our aim is acting for social, human, civil, cultural solidarity. We are a no-profit association. CIPAX was founded in 1982 with a specific feature. We believe that the religions and different religious experiences, faiths, we can say, in a broader way, because we have connection with Buddhism too, for instance, can and should work together to promote peace, to work for peace. And we believe that they can make the difference in the process of stop killing, of opening, in the process of opening a peace process. Of course, we cooperate. This is a very important thing. We lay and non-believers too. We have some of them with us in our directing organism. In the ecumenical process, they created this definition in Europe. Peace, justice, and integrity. Sorry, I didn't remember the English word. In Italian, we translate safety. Or safety, but integrity of creation, and these are the main aims of our action, and this is what we work for. But in the traditional non-violence like Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and also Aldo Capitini, who is perhaps the most important non-violent leader in Italy, historically. And we believe in interfaith dialogue, and not only, but we think that it must not be only a dialogue, but a real cooperation. And we believe in working together on a equal relationship. In a country like Italy, the Catholic Church is so dominant, and so ecumenism is often intended, is always meant at something like the Catholic Church is so open that calls other religions to cooperate. We don't believe in that kind. We think that is quite the beginning, only the first step, because we believe that we have to be really together, all together, and no faith must be dominant in any way. And so we, perhaps in this, we have always been very strictly connected with the Protestant world. Above all, they are brothers and sisters, Baptists and Valdesians, with the Valdesians, theologians and communities. We work together, and we've been working together from the beginning. And as I said before, in the 80s, we were very connected with the theology of liberation contexts, and we were very active. CIPAX were very active with our founder, who is Gianni, Gianni Novelli, Novelli, and I think I asked you to quote him because he's our wise father, and now he's a bit too old. He couldn't be in Vienna, but he was with us with his heart. And so we organize cultural activities and promote peace culture, and try to improve peace networks. Also, sometimes we try to help lay networks as well. And in these last 2 years, we've been working very strictly with the GLAM, GLAM, which means Globalization and Environment Commission of the Federation of the Italian Churches. I don't really know what are the aims of your research. If it's a general research, you should call them. I can give you contacts. I don't know if you want to explore the organization, which were in Vienna, but they were in Vienna with us too, and we made a document together, and this document somehow was quoted in the final text because the word faith was not there, and with our words they saw that they should mention them. And what else? Yes, we take an active part in the general peace movement now in Italy, in particular in Europe for Peace, what we call Europe for Peace. And at the beginning of our history, we were very active in Latin America and also in the United States, where we work with some pacifist nuns and priests like Rosemary Lynch or the Berrigan brothers. Historical, very important historical figures of the pacifist world. And now, and also in Europe, we have many contacts. we organize cultural activities, but also spiritual meetings, interreligious spiritual meetings, where we talk about what we can call for peace, especially in the last period with the conflict. So difficult, politically difficult to deal with. We had these moments when Europe for Peace had its mobilization times, and so I think that was a sign that faiths can be something together.
Absolutely amazing. Let me go back to Aldo Capitini. I researched him, I searched him, and he was an Italian philosopher, poet, political activist, anti-fascist, and educator. And yeah, he developed also Gandhi's theory of nonviolence. Let me go back to him. What do you say? He inspired CIPAX, or what was it? Do you mention
Aldo Capitini?
Yes, yes.
Aldo Capitini in the 80s organized a very important moment, the Marcia, which is a sort of march, yes, from Perugia to Assisi. These are two small towns in Italy, in the Umbria, UMBRIA region. And Assisi, as you know, is the birth town of Saint Francis, and so it has a very, very strong symbolic meaning, symbolic and spiritual meaning, historical meaning, as it is is right at the center of the Catholic, and not only Catholic, because Saint Francis is a very important figure for all pacifists. And so he imagined this sort of the Pacific, of course, non-violent and demonstration. Many groups, grassroots groups and movements together walk from Perugia to Assisi, about 25 kilometers, and every 2 years, sometimes every year, when there are some conflicts which involves Europe strongly, like now. And it's a beautiful demonstration because it's very, you have very colored signs and many young people. This is a very important thing. Many young people and many different movements, lay or Catholics, which meet just to say that they want peace in that wider way we talked about before.
Absolutely, yes. Amazing figure. I'm reading now that yeah, he was a libertarian.
And then he wrote many books, of course, about non-violence. He sometimes took the non-violence theory in Italy as an Italian.
Very interesting. Yes, one should read them. Read him. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I only have the book in Italian, but I can send it to you if you have some people who can help you.
Sure. I believe in the internet you can look it up. Yeah, so let's move on to my next question. I'm also inspired by the way, for example, Jesus behaved or his ideas. In this sense, I am very much touched and inspired by Jesus, but I'm critical on the institutions of the Christian institutions, and of course because of the long history of violence and cooperation with not only fascism but imperialism, colonialism. So I'm skeptical on that. So my question is, what has Christianity to do with peace? Do you refer to Jesus and how the way he acts, or what is it?
Yes, we think that Christianity, must be is a very complex word, because it has to be meant in so many different ways. And so, of course, you have the institutions which sometimes are involved with the worst political powers in the world. And but you have the Jesus's message in the Vangelo. I'm sorry.
New Testament.
In the New Testament, yeah, that's right. In the New Testament, which is clearly a non-violent and love message, and so we refer to that, and we used to be very close to the grassroots communities, Christian communities movement in Latin America and in Italy too. They were a bit, I belong to that too, I personally. They are a bit too critical. I mean, they sometimes in the past, they almost felt outside the institutional churches. CIPAX never got to that point, because CIPAX believes that you have to work inside the church and the Catholic Church and the churches in general in order to change their political approach. That's our aim. But of course, we personally, all of us, are against the power. The church, which is involved with political power in a not democratic way, or in a corrupted way, even worse.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And for those people that are watching this interview who don't know, liberation theology is some sort of Christian theological approach,
yes,
that emphasizes liberation of the oppressed. So here the focus is on the poor, on the oppressed, on the subaltern, and it tackles inequality, racism, and yeah, such things.
That's right. Yes. And because, of course, you can read the New Testament and the Bible in general in different ways. You have to interpret texts. And you have so many different theological approaches. You have the official and institutional ones, which can also be very reactionary. Sometimes they even support oppression. But you have so many open-minded theologians, women and men. I underline that can be women too. And we have, for instance, we also have feminist theologists and eco-feminist theologists. We're very close to that context too. We the last cantiere, we call it like that, the last year of activity, annual yearly activities, was about environment, spirituality, and environment, or even, as we said, spirituality is environment, because eco-feminist theology taught us that we are interconnected with every element in nature. And so nature itself has its own spirituality we have to respect. We have to go. We have to contrast anthropocentrism, which is so destructive towards nature and towards human society as well, because it creates injustice and violation of rights.
Absolutely important. Yeah. So let's move on to my next question. As I mentioned, we met at the International Summit for Peace in Ukraine, held in Vienna. And before the meeting, before the big conference started, there was a scandal, some sort of scandal, because the mass media presented this conference they framed the conference in a way such as this is propaganda, and one has to be careful and not attend and many actors in the Austrian also academia did pressured people not to go there, not to speak there, and so on and so forth. So there was a fight even before the conference started. For example, one example was how this trick or how this frame works. On the 7th of June, the Austrian newspaper The Standard published an article with the title the International Summit for Peace is allegedly under propaganda suspicion and so on and so forth. But one day later, they changed the title because then they knew that the ÖGB, the Austrian workers union organization, the biggest in Austria, canceled the room. So they flipped the title, they turned it around, and then they say, the ÖGB shut the doors for the propagandist conference, and so they are turning things around. So first there was the pressure, the heavy pressure, and then the ÖGB canceled their rooms. So it was not like, okay, but this is their trick, and this is how they framed it, and this is how they look at this conference. So you attended this conference as well, like many others, and I did an interview with Maria from Russia, who had in the beginning some stomach ache because Russia was not condemned in the way that she wanted to hear it, and many others even left-wing has criticized, but some mentioned, like Professor Klaus Mögling mentioned good things. So in the same manner, I want to ask you the same. You attended it all the time, so 2 days. And what was your impression? What was good? What went wrong? And yeah, please explain us how did you feel, and what was your impression?
Excuse me. First of all, I'd like to ask you a question. I don't know if I understood well. There was some debate and criticizing debate in the leftist area too, in Austria. What were the critical observations?
Yes. So
perhaps would you want to? No, perhaps you can tell me later. I'd like to something about that.
Yeah, no, they are important. No, this is an important debate. There are two lines of arguments. The first line of argument, which I totally share, is that you have to mention that Russian soldiers need to leave Ukraine. But this is also one of the conditions, or maybe one of the points that you have to negotiate. So first, of course, you have to sit on the table, but one of the points that also was missed at the last declaration that was published by the International Summit for Peace, that point was left aside. So this is a criticism that I share. Russian troops need to leave Ukraine, and also NATO troops need to leave weapons, not soldiers. So both sides need to de-escalate. And the other line of argument was more like, and this is like the trick ad hominem argument. So you discredit individual persons. And by doing that, you show that this whole conference is like fake and propaganda, just because you criticize one or two persons. And especially Jeffrey Sachs was criticized by showing up in Russian media and doing interviews with some Russian propagandists and so on. And yes, you can criticize him for doing that. And you can criticize, for example, Sachs and Noam Chomsky for being a little bit one-sided and just focusing on NATO. Like the Russian activist told me in the interview, she had stomachache because they are one-sided. And they leave aside that Putin is an authoritarian leader, that this invasion is illegal and they should stop, and so on and so forth. So I understand both line of argument. The first line that I mentioned, I totally agree. One has to mention that Russian troops need to leave. But on the other hand, the second argument is like ad hominem. Criticize him, go attend the conference, get involved in a debate. And this is how it works, but not cancel culture and 2 days before the meeting, cancel the rooms and so on and so forth. So this was the scandal, in my opinion. This was not correct. Yeah, so this was the pretext in the left-wing bubble.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I think that peace movement has the aim to talk on an ideal ground, especially in this period where you every day you have a so strong propaganda pro-war in the Western countries. Really, it's incredible. It's incredible. Just talking about peace is a scandal. You can talk, you can say anything because you are condemned immediately as pro-Putin, and you can say anything. And so I think that this summit was an excellent idea itself. And I admire Austrian organizers who could react so well, to the shutting of the doors, which was really something unbelievable. I think politically unbelievable, and I was very disappointed to hear that it was perhaps the most important leftist union organization which did that. But I noticed, I'm very sad to say that, I noticed, as I told you, I think, when we met there personally, that the leader of our CGIL, who was scheduled in the last panel, there was a slide to say that didn't come, didn't appear. He's very, very active. So if he wasn't there, I think he chose not to be there. And so that was very sad too. In this context, I think that we can criticize some elements of the summit, but we have to appreciate what has been done. It's very, very important and can be the beginning of a stronger peace movement in Europe and in the world. He helped to make connections and to say, okay, in September, let's try to do something on an international level. That's the first point, I think. And speakers and panels were very, very good, a very high level, and very interesting from a political point of view. And so people who went there, I think, learned so much, and could hear in very important voices directly, and that was another very important thing, a very, very good thing. And one thing that perhaps did not go very well, that there was no time for a public debate at the end. We could discuss only in the small groups, in the seminars, and that was perhaps it was a pity, because it would have been good to have a wider confrontation. But I understand that there was no time. Perhaps it was too much, one day and a half or so for such a complex theme in such a complex period. And from a political point of view, I think that somehow a peace movement should try to include different lines. It's very hard to go to a strictly political ground. I think they're two different things somehow. And what was important, I think, was to say we do not accept war propaganda. In this atmosphere, it's really important, because we can do that. We can do that in Italy. We can do that, and I saw that in Austria too, because we know what happened at the beginning of the summit. So I think that was the most important political message. I was very impressed by the words of the Irish deputy, European deputy. I'm sorry, I didn't write the name. I don't remember her name now.
Claire Daly.
It was a very strong, yes. And she said that peace process is very long and complex. And at the end, both sides have to renounce to something they wanted at the beginning. And it can take years. We hope not, of course, but it can take years. But the important thing is to say that now we want to stop killing, and now we want to start a dialogue. And the summit did this, I think. That was good. And for grassroots movements, yes, we could exchange contacts and ideas, but only in a limited dimension. I think limited groups. That was the point. Perhaps just a moment in which people could talk really all together. It would have been better, or perhaps introduce the different organizations which were there, because we at the end we only listened to the speakers, who were really, really interesting, but we just listened to them. No, that this is my only critical point. And I think that an excellent thing was to try to have non-violent and pacifist leaders from the area involved, directly involved, speaking to us. That was really a strong emotion too. And I think that the peace movement has this point as an important aim, the most important aim, besides, of course, trying to have a process of peace started. And this aim is to support non-violent objectors of conscience. Now, perhaps we know that there are two Russians in Ukraine who who risked their lives, and so many in Russia. And this is something which goes beyond, which goes beyond the boundaries and also beyond the conflict somehow, because we have to protect non-violence leaders and activists everywhere. And that was very good.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, the speech.
Sorry, I can hear you not very well.
The speech, for example, from Vice President of Bolivia, Coquehuanca,
Yes.
it was great. It touched my soul, and it was very inspiring. So, you know, the problem with framing and the whole public debate is that one gets the impression that the whole event was staged and the whole event is a propaganda event, and this is very problematic. For example, there were several interviews with the Ukrainian ambassador in Vienna, and he said this is clearly a propaganda event, and so on and so forth. So, and one has to understand that the dominant narrative and the public discourse, you know, in Germany, for example, Florence Gaub, a German military expert, she said that we need to escalate this war with Russia in order to get peace. So this is the dominant narrative, not only weapon delivery. This is only one part. We need to escalate. We need to show Russia that here is the you know, here is the limit. And also Lloyd Austin, defense minister in the US, said we need to weaken Russia. And there are many experts and military stuff that are forcing, so to speak, this discourse. And this is the dominant discourse. And on the other hand, there are peace movements, for example, Christian because of faith, anarchists because they do not accept nation states. There are Marxists, there are left wings, there are many different people gathering together in a peaceful manner, by the way, they try to de-escalate and to find a solution. So this is I believe the fight that is going on. And as you mentioned, Claire Daly said a wonderful thing about the silent majority. And this is very important because one gets the impression that this dominant narrative is that what everybody believes, but this is not the truth. This is just titles of newspapers and journalists that are paid for doing that, but and maybe their opinion. But the silent majority, that, for example, there was a poll in Vienna, in Austria, that showed that about 70-80% of the Austrians are neutrality and not escalating the war. And I believe similar public polls and research is done. Yes. And in many European countries, we are afraid of a third world war. So we want to stop this. And this is the debate for people that get a wrong impression and like Gramsci said, this is a fight for words and for interpretation. So this is important to mention. Yes. So let's move on to the next question. Rainer Braun mentioned at the conference that he is proud of Italy and he is proud of you guys, because Italy, got around 100,000 people on the streets, and you get the impression that Italy is very strong. Why is the peace movement and why is the protest and the energy so strong in Italy? Because in Austria, they are not so much, they do not pay so much attention to what's going on. I got the impression.
Yes, in Italy, we have the leftist area, but also the Catholic area, which are very interested and involved in peace movement. So it's quite easy to reach high numbers in demonstrations, and some of them were even disappointed by 100,000 because we were used to really huge numbers when there was the Iraq wars, for instance. But we understand that right now, it was a very, very good result. And I think the presence of these two elements is what make us stronger, perhaps in this moment, than other peace movements in Europe.
I understand. Yes, it's impressive from an Austrian view, because it's unimaginable to get in Austria 100,000 people on the street.
Of course, I'm talking like grassroots Catholics.
Yeah.
But you know, for instance, in that demonstration, in that march I talked about before, the Perugia Assisi, you have so many parish groups, no? Really. Small groups which are unknown on a national level come together there, just to say not to war.
Okay, understand. Yes. Let's move on to my last question. What is your impression of the Vatican peace plan? There was, I believe, there were two peace plans organized by the Vatican. And the latest one, if I remember correctly, Italian Cardinal Matteo Zuppi was tasked by Pope Francis to carry out a peace mission and a peace plan. So do we get any news? What is the stage of this peace plan, and is it internationally accepted? What is the reaction in Italy, and do you believe it's realistic? And what do you know about the peace plan?
Well, in Italy, you know, when the Pope speaks, in some way, he's very famous and quoted and listened to. But now Francesco sometimes just doesn't appear on media. You know, they don't say anything about him. Also for this last Zuppi's mission, newspapers and media in general try to stress the what didn't work, you know, and it's so amazing, you know. They just don't quote his words, and they try to minimize what he's doing. And so as for the summit, I think that in this context, which is really terrible for the strength of war propaganda, I think that every action is really to approve and to praise, I should say. And this is my personal opinion. I believe that Francesco is very generous and is also truly connected to this aim, and I think that it's difficult that this action can have real results in the immediate right now. I mean, and but I think that the symbolic meaning is very strong, and I should say, unfortunately, because I'm a lay person. After all, I am a believer. I believe, I have a faith, but I think that politics should be lay. And but now it's not like that. Now we don't have in Europe. In Europe, we don't have important political leaders, outstanding political leaders who want peace and say that. And so And so I think that Pope Francis was really crucial, is really crucial in this time, and it can help it can help sensibilization, and it can support people who, as you said, do not want a military escalation, which has reached an incredibly high level, and because all these people are very isolated and criticized, also, treated like people who do not understand anything and are outside of reality and outside of rationality. That was very good in Vienna too, because war is not rational. I must say this, and Papa Francesco right now helps so much to take courage to say this, because all the other political leaders do not do that, of course, because I think they should.
Yeah, this is sad. This is very sad.
And so as far as political, concrete, real results, I think that anyhow, Matteo Zuppi's going there is one step, the first step, a very, very small step, but is a step in the building of a peace process, only a step. We can't expect more now, but a strong symbolic meaning.
Yeah, that means a lot, and even for yeah, like you said, for symbolic reason, it's very important. I believe he stated that he want 1 billion signatures for his petition, and so he announced it very big. That was also nice. Yes. So I believe Medea Benjamin was saying this at the conference. I never thought about it, but the question was right. She asked, where is the European or US or NATO peace plan or peace proposal? Because we saw China had a peace plan, Brazil had a peace plan. Now the Vatican is, I believe, the second attempt to make some sort of peace plan, peace proposal, and many others. Turkey tried to mediate, and many other actors were involved. So the question here arises: where is the European peace plan? And because Europe, the EU, gained a peace prize a few years ago, and the European Union is famous for, soft power. We are not a military imperialist actor. We are for democracy, human rights, and for peace and prosperity. So show your values, because in the German speaking public debate, I always hear that value-driven foreign policy. But where are your values in times of war? And here you can show your values. But as we mentioned, the quite the opposite is true. That the public discourse is dominated by warmongers and by people who advocate for more weapon delivery and for escalating the war in order to get peace. I mean, I understand the rationale behind it. I mean, I understand it. If you destroy Russia, your empire is getting bigger, and then maybe there is peace. I can understand the point, but it's not. It's cynical to in some sense, because many people will die, and yeah. Anyways, dear Christina, I thank you very much for the interview. I enjoyed it. I was very glad to meet you in person. You are a very humble person. I love talking about many things. It was very nice, and I thank you very much for your time.
I think you can exchange an interview. Can I add one thing? I'm sorry, because I forgot. Excuse me. I forgot about this, talking about the CIPAX that we also the Catholic elements in it strongly support women's rights and LGBT plus rights, and we're very open from an ethical point of view in abortion and final part of human life and so on. That's important, because I didn't mention, I was only thinking about peace, but I think it must be stressed.
That is very important.
Excuse me for this.
No, that is very important. What feminists are calling.
I think I will contact you. I will contact you soon for an interview for one of our news magazines, these magazines.
I'm delighted. Yeah. Yeah. So once again, thank you very much for your time. It was an honor, and yeah, hope to see you soon. And hope Italy is getting stronger in the demonstrations. And please help the European Union out of this crisis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.